I'm Liam, 34, and I've always been the one in my family who goes overboard. At least, that's what my dad likes to say with a chuckle whenever I do anything remotely nice for someone I care about. I work hard. I run a small but successful construction company, and I've always believed that if you have the means to make life a little more special for the people you love, you should. So when my daughter Lily turned 8 this year, I wanted to give her something magical, something she'd remember long after she stopped believing in fairy dust and princess crowns. I spent weeks planning it. I hired a company that sets up mini carnival games and bouncy castles right in your backyard. We had a popcorn machine, cotton candy, face painting, even a balloon artist who could make a tiara out of twisted balloons. Lily had been talking about it for months, showing me crayon drawings of her dream, Royal Carnival, asking if her friends could wear costumes, if we'd have a real crown for her. I said yes to all of it. I probably spent more than I should have, but watching her excitement grow was worth every cent. The morning of the party, I was buzzing with energy. Lily woke up, ran into the kitchen wearing her favorite sparkly pajamas, and practically danced when she saw the boxes of decorations and party favors by the door. "Daddy, is today really my royal day?" she asked, grinning with her missing front tooth. I knelt down and fastened the cheap plastic tiara I bought her on top of her head. "Today is your day, princess," I told her. By the time the vendors arrived, the backyard looked like something out of a Pinterest board. My friends and I helped set everything up: streamers, a photo booth, games, the works. Guests started trickling in, and Lily was beaming, running from the cotton candy machine to the bouncy house, dragging her cousins behind her. For a few hours, it felt perfect. Then I went inside to grab the cake. It was a huge 2-tier cake, the most expensive part of the whole thing. Vanilla with raspberry filling, covered in pink buttercream with sugar flowers. But when I pulled the lid off, my stomach dropped. Across the top, written in big blue frosting letters, were the words, "Congrats, Liam." For a second, I actually laughed. It had to be a mistake. But then my mom walked into the kitchen carrying a stack of paper plates. "Oh, good. You found the cake," she said casually, as if nothing was wrong. "Mom," I said slowly, pointing to the lettering. "Why does Lily's cake say congrats, Liam?" She looked at me like I had asked why the sky was blue. "Oh, we just combined the parties. It made more sense that way. Your brother's little boy is turning 5 next week, so we figured we'd save everyone the trouble and just celebrate both kids today." I stood there frozen, cake knife in hand. "You what?" Before she could answer, my dad strolled in, laughing. "Don't make that face, son. It's just practical. Saves money, saves time, win-win." My brother, of course, chose that moment to appear with his phone out, recording a video for his Instagram story. "Hey man, great setup," he said cheerfully. "We told Liam he'd get a joint party this year, didn't we, babe?" His girlfriend, perched on a chair scrolling through her phone, didn't even look up but muttered, "Yeah, it's cute. He loves sharing." I wanted to scream. Instead, I walked outside and saw Lily standing by the popcorn machine, staring at me expectantly, waiting for her cake. My chest ached. I put on my best fake smile and brought the cake out, setting it on the table. The kids gathered around, cheering. Lily looked at the cake, then at me, then back at the cake again. Her smile faltered, just slightly. "Daddy," she whispered, "why does it say Liam?" "That's not me." I swallowed hard and told her we'd fix it later, but she was quiet through the entire song. She didn't blow out her candles. She just took off her tiara and handed it to me like she was giving up something important. That was the moment something inside me shifted. I didn't yell. I didn't throw the cake, even though a part of me wanted to. I just smiled tightly, helped Lily cut a slice, and stayed silent through the rest of the party. Every time my dad laughed about how smart it was to combine things, or my brother made a joke about saving me money, it felt like they were driving a nail a little deeper. By the time the last guest left and the vendors were packing up, I had already made up my mind. I walked back inside, grabbed my phone, and started canceling things: the joint family picnic next month, the Christmas trip we had planned, even the group chat I'd been running to coordinate events. I shut it all down. I didn't yell. I didn't explain. I just went quiet. And that's when the phone call started. The first call came that same night, just as I was getting Lily ready for bed. She was sitting on the edge of her bed, still in her princess dress, but without the tiara, picking at the hem. I was trying to distract her, asking which stuffed animal should guard her dream kingdom tonight, when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. "Dad." I ignored it. A minute later, Mom called. Then my brother. Then my aunt. The notifications were stacking up so fast, it was lighting up the room. Lily glanced at the phone, then at me. Are you in trouble? She asked softly. I smiled, ruffled her hair, and told her no, that sometimes grown-ups just get upset about silly things. She nodded but didn't look convinced. When she finally fell asleep, I slipped out into the hallway and checked my phone. There were 17 missed calls, a dozen voicemails, and the family group chat had exploded. Not cool, Liam. You embarrassed your brother. You ruined a good day over some cake lettering? Grow up. I scrolled, jaw clenched. My brother's messages were the loudest. You made everyone uncomfortable. Next time you want to sulk, just stay home. Liam had fun. Lily didn't even care. Stop being dramatic. I put the phone down and went to the kitchen. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. I poured myself a glass of water and stared at the half-eaten cake on the counter. The blue frosting still said, "Congrats, Liam," like some cruel joke. For a split second, I thought about throwing it in the trash, but I didn't. Instead, I took a photo. Not for social media, not to send to anyone. Just for me. Proof that this happened. The next morning, Mom showed up unannounced. She let herself in like she always does. Carrying a tray of muffins like that would smooth things over. "Good morning," she said brightly, as if we hadn't just exchanged 100 passive-aggressive messages. I stayed by the sink, arms crossed. "Morning," I said flatly. She put the tray down and sighed. "Listen, honey, yesterday just got a little mixed up, but it was still a nice party. Lily had fun, didn't she?" I almost laughed. She took off her tiara and wouldn't blow out her candles. Mom's smile faltered for a second, but then returned. "Kids bounce back. She'll forget about it by next week." I could feel my temper rising, but I stayed quiet. Mom went on, trying to spin the whole thing like it was no big deal. "You have to understand, your brother and his girlfriend are under a lot of pressure right now. They're saving for a house, and with Liam starting school soon." I cut her off. "So that justifies hijacking my daughter's birthday?" She frowned like I was the unreasonable one. "We didn't hijack anything. We just combined it. It's not like Lily didn't still have her party." "She didn't have her party," I said, my voice sharper now. "She had their party." Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. "You're overreacting." That was the moment I realized we weren't going to get an apology. Not from her, not from Dad, not from anyone. To them, I was being difficult. To them, this was just another instance of Liam making everything about him. After she left, I sat on the couch and thought about it for a long time. I kept replaying Lily's face when she saw the cake. I kept hearing my dad's laugh, my brother's offhand comment about saving me money. Something in me hardened. Over the next few days, the pressure campaign started. First came the guilt trips. "Lily's not the only grandchild. You should be happy they wanted to celebrate together. You're teaching her to be selfish." Then came the subtle jabs. My brother posted photos from the party with captions like, "Best day ever. Teamwork makes the dream work, and nothing wrong with a little family efficiency." The comments from our relatives were full of heart emojis and so smart. And "love this idea." It was like I was the only one who saw anything wrong. Even my cousin texted me privately saying, "Man, I get why you're upset, but you kinda made it awkward leaving like that." I hadn't even left early. I just went quiet. Apparently silence was enough to brand me as the villain. Then came the kicker. My dad called me 2 nights later and said, in his most patient voice, "Son, I think you owe your brother an apology." I laughed. Out loud. For what? For giving my daughter a party and watching you turn it into a group discount. "You know he can't afford big parties like you can," Dad said. "It would have hurt his feelings if we'd done one for Lily and not for Liam. So instead you hurt Lily's feelings." There was a long pause on the line. Finally, Dad said, "You're too sensitive about this. She'll get over it. Family comes first." When I hung up, I didn't feel sad anymore. I felt cold. I spent the next few days ignoring calls and focusing on Lily. We did our own little makeup celebration, just the two of us, where I baked a tiny cake that actually said her name. She smiled for the first time since the party. That smile reminded me what really mattered, and it made me even more certain that I wasn't going to let this slide. But my family wasn't done. The weekend after the party, my brother hosted a casual barbecue at my parents' house. I wasn't planning to go, but then Lily asked if we could see Grandma and Grandpa, and I didn't want her caught in the middle of this mess. So we went. When we arrived, My brother greeted me like nothing had happened, beer in hand, grinning. Hey man, no hard feelings, right? I didn't answer. He clapped me on the shoulder anyway and said, we were just talking about next year. We might as well do a joint party again. Maybe rent a bigger place this time. You can handle the setup again, right? That was it. That was the moment the last thread of patience in me snapped. I smiled. A small, cold, tight-lipped smile. Sure, I said, my voice calm in a way that made even him pause. I'll handle everything. And that's when the idea started to form. A plan that would make sure none of them ever dismissed me or Lily like that again. But before I could put anything into motion, my brother made one more comment, loud enough for everyone in the yard to hear. See? I told you he'd come around. He just needed to cool off. You know how Liam gets. Big feelings, big drama. Everyone laughed. Even Dad. And I just stood there, smiling, because they had no idea what was coming. I wish I could say that barbecue was the last straw, that I went home, cut them off, and never gave them another chance to hurt us. But part of me, the part that still wanted to believe my parents could be better, hesitated. Maybe if I stayed civil, maybe if I let a little time pass, they would realize how hurtful they'd been. For a few weeks, I stayed quiet. I answered their calls politely, but briefly, kept conversations shallow. Lily asked if we were going back to Grandma's house soon, and I told her maybe, when things settled down. She didn't seem to mind. She was busy with her art projects and playing with the new bike I'd surprised her with. Life was starting to feel normal again. Then came my brother's text. Hey, we're throwing a little get-together for Liam's school milestone. You guys better be there. Mom's already ordering the cake. Big family moment. I stared at the message for a long time before replying with a simple, we'll see. I should have trusted my gut and stayed home. The little get-together turned out to be a full-blown family party, bigger than Lily's birthday had been. There were decorations, food trays, a rented bounce house. All the things I had arranged for Lily, except this time my parents had paid for it. They greeted us at the door with smiles, acting like nothing was wrong, ushering us in as though we were just another pair of guests. I kept my expression neutral, but inside, something started to twist. It wasn't the party itself. Liam deserved to be celebrated, of course. It was the way everyone avoided eye contact with me, the way my brother's girlfriend gave me that smug little smile when she saw us. See? This is how you do it, she said under her breath as I walked past. Lily squeezed my hand tighter. The party went on, and I did my best to keep my daughter distracted, letting her play with her cousins and enjoy the games. For a little while, she was laughing again, and that made me relax. Until it was time for cake. The cake was massive, 3 tiers, superhero-themed, with sparklers on top. Everyone gathered around to sing, and I lifted Lily so she could see over the crowd. Then, as they brought the cake forward, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. It didn't just say, "Congrats, Liam." It said, "Congrats, Liam and Lily. 2 birds, 1 stone." And right there, in front of everyone, my mom announced, "We figured we'd celebrate Lily too, since we missed out on making her feel special last time." The words were meant to sound thoughtful, but they landed like a slap. The room erupted in polite cheers. My brother patted me on the back and said, "See? We're making it right." I looked at Lily, and her face told me everything. She was frozen, staring at the cake like it was a cruel joke. "Daddy," she whispered, "it's not my birthday anymore." I set her down and walked straight to the kitchen. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I gripped the edge of the counter and counted to 10, trying not to lose it in front of everyone. That's when I heard my parents talking in the dining room, just out of sight. "He should be grateful we included her," Mom was saying. "After the scene he made. This is the least we could do to smooth things over." Dad chuckled. "Exactly. Maybe now he'll stop acting like the world revolves around that kid." I froze. That kid. The way he said it, like Lily was an inconvenience. Like my daughter, his granddaughter, was some spoiled brat instead of a sweet, kind little girl who had done nothing wrong except want a party with her name on it. I turned and found them both standing there, smiling like they hadn't just gutted me with their words. "Liam," Mom said sweetly, "aren't you happy? This is our peace offering." "Peace offering?" I repeated, my voice quiet. "Yes," she said brightly. "Now everyone's included, no one feels left out, and we can move on from all that birthday drama. Isn't that nice?" I didn't trust myself to answer. Then my brother walked in and, as if to add insult to injury, handed me a stack of paper plates. "Hey man, can you cut the cake for us? You're good at that." That was it. I put the plates down and walked out. Not just out of the kitchen, out of the house entirely. I took Lily's hand, told her we were leaving, and didn't look back. "Daddy, are we in trouble?" she asked as we got into the car. I shook my head. "No, sweetheart. But we're done." That night, the phone call started again. This time, I didn't answer. Not for anyone. The next day, I woke up to a storm of messages accusing me of ruining another family event. My aunt texted, "You're teaching Lily to be dramatic." My cousin sent, "It's just cake, man." My brother sent a voice message saying I was selfish and ungrateful and that I owed mom and dad a thank you for trying to make amends. But the message that really did it, the one that made something inside me snap completely, was from my dad. "If you can't be part of this family without causing problems, maybe you should sit the next few events out. We'll invite Lily when she's old enough to come without the attitude." I stared at the message for a long time, my hands shaking. They weren't just dismissing me anymore. They were threatening to cut me out entirely and keep my daughter in their little orbit, as if they had any right to decide when or how she saw them. That was the moment I stopped hoping they'd change. That was the moment I decided I wasn't just going to pull back quietly. I was going to make sure they never had the chance to treat Lily like that again. And I was going to make sure they finally understood what it feels like to be excluded. The following week felt like walking through fog. I went to work, came home, made dinner, helped Lily with her homework, but I was on autopilot. There was no music in the house, no laughter, no calls answered. My phone sat face down on the kitchen counter, buzzing every few hours with another notification from someone in the family. I didn't check them. I didn't want to read another lecture or guilt trip or passive-aggressive plea to come back to the fold. Instead, I focused on Lily. She seemed quieter too, though she didn't say much about what had happened. One night as I was tucking her in, she asked me, very softly, "Daddy, why does everyone keep writing Liam's name on my cakes?" I sat on the edge of her bed and tried to explain that sometimes grown-ups make choices that don't make sense. That sometimes they think they're being fair when they're really just being selfish. She was quiet for a long time before saying, "I don't like parties anymore." Hearing that hit me harder than anything my family had said. Lily had been so excited for her birthday for months. She had counted down the days on the little calendar in her room, talking about cake flavors and dress choices. And now she didn't want parties at all. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at my laptop. Something in me had shifted completely. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was done. Done trying to reason with people who saw my daughter as an afterthought. Done waiting for an apology that would never come. But being done didn't mean doing nothing. I started thinking back over the last few years. All the little moments I had brushed off as just family being family. Times when my brother would accidentally forget to invite us to something, but somehow remember to tag me in the photos afterward. Times when my parents had said things like, "Don't spoil her," or "You're teaching her to expect too much." Times when I had hosted, paid for, or organized events and they had treated it like it was their effort, their generosity, their name that mattered. I started writing things down. Not out of spite, not yet, but because I needed to see it all in one place. A timeline of every slight, every dismissal, every time they had made Lily or me feel small. The list grew faster than I expected. The more I wrote, the clearer the picture became. This wasn't about one cake, or one party, or even one bad day. This was a pattern. This was how they had always treated us. Like we were convenient when we could contribute, disposable when we couldn't. I stayed quiet for a month. No visits, no calls, no texts beyond short responses when absolutely necessary. I could tell it was starting to get under their skin. My brother sent me a string of messages asking if I was still mad about the cake and accusing me of punishing the whole family over one little misunderstanding. My dad left a voicemail that said, "This is childish. We need to talk man to man." I didn't respond, but even as I was pulling away, I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me. There were moments when I caught myself wondering if I was overreacting, if maybe I should just give in and let things go. That's what they wanted. They wanted me to cave, to show up at the next gathering, to laugh it off and pretend everything was fine. Then one afternoon, I got a call from Lily's school. Her teacher, Mrs. Chun, said Lily had been unusually quiet in class, not raising her hand or volunteering like she used to. She asked if something had happened at home. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just my burden. This whole situation was affecting Lily more deeply than I had realized. After I hung up, I went to pick her up early from school and took her to her favorite ice cream place. We sat in the booth, just the two of us, and I asked her what was wrong. She hesitated, stirring her ice cream until it turned into soup, before saying, "When we go to Grandma's house, it feels like no one sees me. Like I'm just there." That was the moment I knew there was no going back. That night, I sat down with my laptop again. But this time I wasn't just making a list. I was making a plan. I went through my emails, my receipts, my bank statements. I started documenting every party I had paid for, every event I had hosted, every expense I had covered over the years. I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to use it yet, but I knew I needed it. I started putting money aside too. A little extra each week, quietly building a separate fund. Not for me, for Lily. For her future, for anything that might give her joy and stability outside of this family circus. And slowly, I started cutting strings. I left the family group chat without saying a word. I unfollowed them on social media. I told my parents politely that we wouldn't be attending any more family events for a while. When they demanded an explanation, I simply said, "We need space," and left it at that. The backlash was immediate. My brother called me a coward. My aunt said I was alienating Lily from her family. My dad texted, "This is exactly what I was afraid of. You're letting your pride get in the way of family unity." But the quieter I stayed, the more control I felt returning to me. It was painful. Every memory, every guilt trip, every time I saw Lily glance at the phone when it buzzed and ask, "Is that Grandma?" But it was necessary. And as the weeks stretched into months, something unexpected happened. Lily started to bloom again. She smiled more. She laughed more. She stopped asking about the next party at Grandma's house. Instead, she asked if we could have our own little celebrations, just the two of us. Movie nights, pancake breakfasts, bike rides at the park. It was like she had been holding her breath for months and was finally exhaling. And that was when I knew that whatever plan I came up with, it had to be more than just cutting them off. It had to be something that showed them, clearly, undeniably, that we didn't need them. Something that made them feel the absence they had taken for granted. Something that would make them think twice before ever dismissing us again. Cutting them off was the hardest thing I'd ever done, at first. But once the noise faded, once the phone stopped buzzing and the guilt trips turned into awkward silence, I realized just how much space I'd given myself to breathe. For the first time in years, there were no last-minute family obligations dragging me away from my own plans, no passive-aggressive comments at Sunday dinners to swallow, no one rolling their eyes when I tried to do something nice for Lily. And in that quiet, I started to see possibilities. I threw myself into my work. My construction business had been running steadily for a few years, but I'd always kept it small, partly because I didn't want to miss too much time with Lily and partly because, if I'm honest, I didn't think I needed to push harder. But now I had a new kind of energy, sharper, more focused. I was determined to build something that was completely ours, something no one could take credit for or diminish. I started taking on bigger contracts, investing in better equipment, hiring a small but reliable crew. Word spread fast. We were professional, on time, and we didn't cut corners. By the end of that first quarter, we were booked out months in advance. Money wasn't the point, but the money started coming in. Enough that I could start seriously saving for Lily's future. Enough that I could pay off the last of my debts. Enough that I could finally take a deep breath without feeling like I was living paycheck to paycheck. And as my business grew, so did my confidence. One day, I caught myself looking in the mirror and barely recognizing the man staring back. Not because I'd changed physically, though I had lost a little weight and looked sharper now that I was sleeping better, but because of the way I carried myself. There was no heaviness in my shoulders anymore. And Lily noticed. "Daddy, you're smiling more," she said one evening as we were eating pancakes for dinner. I laughed. "I guess I am." She grinned, that big, gap-toothed grin I loved so much, and said, "I like it." We started creating our own traditions. Friday night movie marathons with popcorn. Saturday morning farmers market trips. Backyard campouts with a tent and flashlights where she'd fall asleep telling me ghost stories she made up on the spot. And for her next birthday, I didn't hold back. I didn't invite my family. I didn't tell them about it at all. Instead, I rented a small hall, invited her closest friends from school, decorated the place exactly the way she wanted, unicorns and glitter everywhere, and hired a local magician who had the kids screaming with laughter. Lily wore a brand new dress and a real tiara this time, one I bought from a little boutique just for her. When the cake came out, it had her name on it in big gold letters. She beamed at me, then leaned over and whispered, "This is the best party ever." And for the first time in almost a year, I felt something inside me fully unclench. But the real turning point came a few weeks later, when my brother called out of the blue. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hey man," he said, sounding strangely cheerful. "Listen, we're planning a big family barbecue next month, and Mom said it's not the same without you guys. Think you can come?" I didn't say yes or no. I just listened. He kept talking, making it sound like an olive branch, but every word confirmed what I already knew. They didn't miss us. They missed what we brought to the table. My effort, my money, my organizing skills. When I hung up, I didn't feel guilty this time. I felt powerful, and that power made me think bigger. I started putting serious work into my plan. I had spent months quietly gathering information, receipts, photos, screenshots of texts, proof of every time I had covered for them or hosted something or gone out of my way to make family events happen. I had everything lined up, but now I realized that the most effective revenge wasn't just a dramatic confrontation. It was building a life so complete, so unshakably good, that their absence was obvious, and making sure they knew exactly what they had lost access to. I started expanding my business even further. I got into commercial projects, partnering with local businesses, renovating storefronts and offices. Before long, I was making connections with people who had real influence in our town, people my parents used to brag about knowing distantly, but who now called me directly. One of those projects turned out to be especially important. A local community center was being renovated, and they wanted a family-friendly contractor who could work fast but do it right. I took the job, poured myself into it, and by the time we were done, the director of the center was raving about my work. She asked if I'd be willing to sponsor some of their future events. That's when it clicked. What better way to show my family what they'd lost than by becoming the person who could give other people's kids the magical experiences they had stolen from my daughter? I signed on as a sponsor for their annual Carnival fundraiser, paying for the rides and games, the very same company I'd used for Lily's party, and made sure the event was open to the whole town. When the posters went up with my company's name on them, I knew it was only a matter of time before my parents saw. Sure enough, a week later, I got a message from my mom. "Saw your name on the Carnival flyers. That's nice of you. Are we invited?" I didn't reply. Instead, I printed out a stack of VIP tickets for Lily's classmates and her teachers, and made sure she handed them out at school herself. Seeing her light up as she told me, "Everyone's so excited, Daddy," made it all worth it. Meanwhile, word of my business kept spreading. My brother, who worked in a related trade, had always been the one my parents bragged about, the hard worker, the one with a real job, but now he was asking me if I had any leads or openings on my crew because his hours were getting cut. I told him politely that we weren't hiring right now, but I'd keep him in mind. It was a small thing, but it felt like the scales were starting to tip. By the time summer rolled around, I was no longer the same man who had stood in that backyard, quietly swallowing humiliation. I was thriving. My business was thriving. Most importantly, Lily was thriving. And with every new success, every new connection, every smile on Lily's face, my plan for the perfect, quiet revenge became sharper. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to make sure they watched from the outside as we built a world without them. And then, when the moment was right, I was going to remind them exactly why they were no longer welcome in it. By midsummer, my business was not just surviving. It was thriving beyond anything I'd imagined. I had 3 full crews working jobs across town, a waiting list of clients, and enough saved to finally consider buying a bigger house. The more success I built, the clearer it became that my plan didn't need to be messy or loud. It just needed to be undeniable. The first piece of the puzzle fell into place on an ordinary Tuesday morning. I was at a local chamber of commerce breakfast, something I'd started attending to network with other business owners, when I overheard 2 people at my table talking about a new community grant for small businesses. The grant wasn't just money. It also came with a partnership program to work with local schools, nonprofits, and public events. That was it. That was the key I didn't know I'd been waiting for. I applied the same day, submitting all my paperwork, photos of completed projects, testimonials from clients. Within a month, I was approved, and just like that, my company became one of the official partners for local town events. We were now the go-to contractor for renovations in public spaces and one of the main sponsors for school fundraisers and community fairs. This meant my company's name was on everything: flyers, banners, online ads. If there was a community event happening, chances were I had helped fund it, and I knew my parents were seeing it. My mom had always been heavily involved in the town's social scene: bake sales, fundraisers, PDA events. When I started showing up to those same events as a sponsor, and sometimes even a guest speaker, I could feel her discomfort from across the room. People were shaking my hand, thanking me, introducing me to their kids. At one event, I caught my mom standing in the corner, watching me as I handed out free drink tickets to a line of smiling parents. She didn't approach me, but later that night she texted, "Seems like you're doing well. Wish we could be part of it." I didn't reply. Instead, I started thinking bigger. If they wanted back in, they were going to have to see, really see, how much better life had become without them. And I was going to give them a front row seat. The opportunity came when the community center director asked if I'd be interested in funding their new Family Day festival. It was going to be the biggest event they'd ever hosted, with rides, food trucks, music, the works. They needed a main sponsor to cover the entertainment and equipment costs, and in exchange, they'd named the event after the sponsor. I didn't even hesitate. We signed the deal that afternoon, and within a week the posters were printed. Lily and Company. Family Fun Day, sponsored by Liam, last name, Construction. I had insisted on putting Lily's name in the title. When the director asked why, I said simply, "Because she's the reason I do all of this." Seeing my daughter's name on those posters, on banners strung across town, on the front page of the local paper, was the single most satisfying moment of my life up to that point. Lily's face lit up when she saw them too. "Daddy, it's my name. Everyone's going to see." "Yes, sweetheart," I said, hugging her. "Everyone's going to see." And everyone did, including my parents. 2 days later, I got a text from my brother. "Mom says we should all go to the Family Day event together. Can you get us some free passes?" I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. "No passes needed. It's open to the public. See you there." The week leading up to the event, I poured myself into the final preparations. I personally checked every vendor setup, made sure the rides were inspected, confirmed the band lineup, even added a few extra activities I knew the kids would love: face painting, a giant bubble station, a petting zoo. I wanted this event to be unforgettable, not just for Lily, but for everyone in town. And I wanted my family to see that I could give the community, and my daughter, something 10 times better than what they had tried to take from her. The morning of the festival, Lily woke me up early, practically bouncing out of bed. She put on the shirt I had made for her with the event logo on it, and I wore one to match. When we arrived at the park, she gasped at how big everything looked. The rides were already spinning, music was playing, and kids were running around with cotton candy. "This is amazing," she said, clutching my hand. "Enjoy it," I told her with a smile. "This is your day." As the crowds poured in, I saw them: my parents, my brother, his girlfriend, their son. They looked around like tourists, wide-eyed at the setup. My dad spotted me near the stage and walked over, his hands in his pockets. "This is impressive," he said gruffly. "Thanks," I replied. He hesitated, then said, "You really didn't have to do all this." I looked him dead in the eye. Yes, I did. He opened his mouth to say something else, but I was already walking away, heading toward Lily, who was waiting for me by the carousel. Throughout the day, I could feel my family watching me. Watching as kids ran up to thank me for the free tickets, as parents shook my hand, as the event director stood on stage and announced that this entire festival had been made possible by me and named after my daughter. I didn't gloat. I didn't even acknowledge them. I just kept smiling, kept making sure everything ran smoothly, kept making sure Lily was having the best day of her life. And as the sun started to set and the music swelled for the closing ceremony, I saw something in my parents' faces that I hadn't seen in a very long time. Regret. But this wasn't the end. This was just the setup. Because I wasn't done yet. This was only the moment that would make them listen when I finally spoke. And when I did, I wasn't going to raise my voice. I was going to make sure every single one of them understood, calmly, clearly, and permanently, that Lily and I were no longer the family afterthoughts. We were the ones who set the standard, and they would have to live with that. When the Family Day festival wrapped up, I expected a call, a text, something. But my parents stayed silent for days. I figured they were stewing, trying to figure out how to spin what they'd seen into something that didn't make them look bad. It didn't matter. I had already decided what came next. I spent the next 2 weeks putting everything in order. I had my timeline of past events printed and bound. Every party I'd paid for, every event I'd hosted, every message or comment that dismissed Lily or made light of our feelings. I organized the receipts, the screenshots, the photos, all neatly tabbed and highlighted. Not to throw at them in anger, but to hand over calmly, like evidence in a court case. Then I invited them all over. It was the first invitation I had extended in nearly a year. My parents, my brother, his girlfriend, even a couple of extended relatives who had been the loudest about family unity. I worded the invitation carefully. Dinner at my place. Come hungry. We need to talk. They showed up looking curious, maybe a little nervous. The smell of the catered meal, yes, catered, I wasn't wasting my energy cooking for them, filled the house. Lily was upstairs, happily watching a movie in her room. I had told her this was a grown-up conversation night. We ate first. I kept the conversation polite, almost unnervingly polite, which I could tell was throwing them off. My brother cracked a few jokes that fell flat. My dad cleared his throat like he wanted to say something, but didn't. When the plates were cleared, I set a leather folder on the table. This, I said calmly, is the last year of my life. Every party, every expense, every time I tried to give my daughter something special and got treated like it was too much, like she was too much. I opened it and slid the first page across the table. A photo of Lily's cake with "Congrats, Liam" written across it in bright blue frosting. My mom flinched. "Do you remember this?" I asked. No one spoke. I turned the pages slowly, one by one, laying them out on the table. Screenshots of text dismissing my feelings. Photos of decorations I had paid for. Receipts with my name on them. Messages from them telling me to grow up and stop being dramatic. When I finished, the table was covered in proof. "This is what you've done," I said. My voice was quiet, but I could feel how heavy the room had become. "And for months, you tried to make me feel like I was crazy for being hurt by it. Like my daughter's feelings didn't matter. Like she didn't matter." My dad opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. "No, you don't get to interrupt. You've been talking over me for years. You can listen for 5 minutes." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. "You think I overreacted?" I continued. "You think it was just a cake, just a party, just one day. But it wasn't. It was a pattern where you treated Lily like a footnote, where you acted like my time, my money, my effort didn't count unless it benefited everyone else, where you laughed when I asked for respect. And I let it go, over and over again, until I couldn't anymore." My brother shifted in his chair, looking uncomfortable. My mom's eyes were shiny, but she still hadn't spoken. "So here's what's going to happen," I said, leaning back in my chair. "From now on, if you want to be in Lily's life, you do it on my terms. You respect her days, her birthday, her milestones, and you respect me when I say no. If you can't do that, you don't get access to us. No parties, no holidays, no quick visits to make yourselves feel better. Nothing." My brother frowned. "You can't just cut everyone out because of one mistake." "One mistake?" I repeated softly. "Look around, Matt. Does that look like one mistake to you?" I gestured to the table full of evidence. He didn't answer. "This isn't punishment," I said finally. "This is a boundary. You can either meet it, or you can stay on the outside looking in. It's your choice." Then I stood, calmly collected the papers back into the folder, and left the room. I didn't yell. I didn't slam a door. I just walked upstairs to check on Lily. Downstairs, I could hear them whispering to each other in the stunned silence I had left behind. When I came back down 10 minutes later, the house was empty. And that was exactly what I wanted. The next morning, I woke up to a text from my mom. "We didn't realize how much we hurt you. We need to talk." I didn't reply. Later that day, my dad called. I let it go to voicemail. My brother tried again that evening. I ignored it, because the revenge wasn't in the speech I had given them. The revenge was in the silence that followed, the silence they finally had to sit with. The next weekend, Lily and I went to the park. As we walked past the community center, I saw one of the new posters announcing that I'd been chosen as Business of the Year for the town's annual gala. I smiled to myself. When that gala came, I knew exactly who I was inviting as my guests of honor. Not my family, but Lily's teacher, her best friend's parents, the people who had supported us without condition. And I knew my family would hear about it anyway. That was the point. This wasn't about slamming the door forever. It was about making them knock and wait. The silence lasted longer than I expected. Weeks passed, then a month. No calls, no surprise visits, no last-minute guilt trips. For the first time in years, there was peace in my house. Real, lasting peace. Then the cracks started to show. One morning, I was at the office going over invoices when my phone buzzed with a message from my cousin. Dude, your dad just told everyone at the diner that you banned them from Lily's life. What's going on? I stared at the text for a second before replying. I set boundaries. If they want to call it a ban, that's their choice. That same evening, my mom called again. I answered this time. Her voice was small, softer than I'd heard in years. Liam, she said, we miss you. We miss Lily. I took a breath. Then you know what you have to do. There was a long pause. We were just trying to keep the family together, she said finally. By erasing my daughter's name from her own birthday? She didn't answer that. When we hung up, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady, grounded, like I'd finally stopped trying to run uphill. 2 weeks later came the town gala, the event where I was being honored as Business of the Year. The room was packed with local business owners, city council members, and community leaders. Lily sat at my table in her best dress, glowing with pride. Halfway through the evening, as they announced my award, I caught sight of my parents standing near the back of the hall. They hadn't been invited, but of course they'd found a way in. I walked up to the stage, accepted the plaque, and took the microphone. Thank you, I said, scanning the crowd. This means a lot. Not because of the business, not even because of the recognition, but because this company started with one goal: to build something better, to build something my daughter could be proud of. Every late night, every early morning, every risk I took was for her. And standing here now, seeing her smiling at me, that's the real award. The audience applauded, and I caught sight of my mom wiping at her eyes. My dad looked down at the floor. My brother wasn't even there. After the ceremony, as guests mingled, my parents finally approached. Liam, my dad said quietly, we were wrong. It wasn't dramatic, no tears or shouting. Just 3 simple words that I'd been waiting to hear for over a year. I know, I said. We want to fix this, Mom added. We don't want to miss any more of Lily's life. I looked at them for a long moment. Then you don't get to just show up when it's convenient. If you're serious about this, you're going to have to show up consistently and respectfully. They nodded. We didn't hug. Not yet. But when I went back to my table, Lily leaned against me and asked, Daddy, are they still mad at us? No, I said, kissing the top of her head. They finally heard us. And that was the truth. Because the real revenge wasn't cutting them off forever. It was making them face what they had done, forcing them to sit in the silence long enough to realize they could lose us for good. And when they finally came back, they came back on our terms. That night, as we drove home with the award sitting on the seat next to Lily, she looked out the window and said, Daddy, I think today was even better than my birthday. I smiled, my hands steady on the wheel. Good, I said, because this is just the beginning. And for the first time, I knew it was true.